joining us here in Block Show Asia in Singapore. And even with this crazy, crazy climate, how are the folks over at PwC viewing blockchain, crypto,
I'll cover all those things if you
Bitcoin?
Yeah, I can cover those things. I can talk about the industry being institutionalized if you want, how we're seeing best practices being developed, I'm happy to cover what PwC is doing in the space. I'm happy to cover also what we're seeing institutional players. I can tell you about best practices.
How about this? You just left the stage. You just left the big stage. What are two key takeaways that you wanted the audience to capture, go home with, and tell their friends?
No, I think there's a couple of very exciting trends going on right now in the crypto ecosystem. One of them is the entry of institutional players. I think we've been all hearing the press, some of the large banks, from a Goldman of this world and the Nomura's, even in the asset management sector, the likes of Fidelity, really getting into the crypto space. And that's actually very exciting because it brings to the industry this level of best practices, governance, and institutionalization. That is very positive for the industry on the long term.
Okay, so we hear a lot about regulation.
Yeah.
What's your position on regulation? Is this the kiss of death, or do you think it's time that the government looked at regulation as protecting the freedoms and liberties that people should have to conduct the way that they would like without being taken advantage of?
Frankly, I think regulations are very positive for the crypto ecosystem. I'll give you a couple of very simple examples. Frankly, let's say, and regulators, frankly, don't get the credit they deserve for the work they've been doing in the crypto space. I'm very privileged in my job is I deal with many regulators around the world. And I have to say the average regulator that I speak with is way more knowledgeable on crypto than the average financial services professional.
So what are their challenges that you're finding? What's the common denominator of the challenges from all these legislators you've spoken with?
Yeah, so one of the challenges with crypto, as you know, is actually the industry is moving so fast, it's very difficult to regulate.
Right.
That being said, I think regulators will play a key role in ensuring those bad apples that try to take advantage of the crypto, excitement, can be dealt with. But also, frankly, there's a lot of what regulators want to see is actually create the right framework that allows innovation to evolve and grow, but restraining certain constraints.
That's such a hard. That's almost a catch-22.
Absolutely.
Right. You want us. The regulators would love us to create a framework, a box around the parameters of creativity.
Correct. Yeah, but you know what, one thing I would say is I'm not sure that regulations can necessarily catch up. This is why I'm a big advocate of best practices. So I'll give you an example.
I like this already, right?
Here we go. So one of the many things I do, in my spare time, I'm the chairman of the FinTech Association of Hong Kong.
Right.
And what we did recently, we published the second edition actually of our best practice guide to ICOs.
What is the goal of this organization first?
So first of all, the FinTech Association was created about a year and a half ago, and really the goal of the association has three pillars. One is advocacy, being kind of an advocate for the FinTech ecosystem. Second is collaboration, bringing together the various players in the FinTech ecosystem. And third is education, basically making sure that various elements were able to empower not only existing financial services professional, but most importantly, the next generation talent that deserves to know about FinTech.
Are the folks at PwC, are you looking at taking these legislators, putting them in one room, and then finally getting best practices so we can have more adoption? I see Southeast Asia is doing a tremendous job in adoption right now.
No, absolutely. First of all, at PwC, our purpose as an organization is to build trust in society and solve important problems. And God knows in the crypto space, there's a big need for that. And this is actually a very serious priority for us. Just case in point, about last November at PwC in Hong Kong, we accepted our first Bitcoin payment for our fees.
Nice.
So again, it shows that we're actually serious about the space. Again, just to give you an example, only in Hong Kong, we have about 40 people, 40, full-time on crypto.
Wow.
And we advise a number of players in the ecosystem, not only exchanges and crypto funds, but also a lot of ICOs and also traditional financial institutions entering the space, regulators and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of need. The industry is becoming more institutionalized, and I really believe there's a need of players like PwC, where we have skill set, we have expertise, and we can bring it to the crypto ecosystem, which, as you know, we actually think is beneficial for the ecosystem.
I think so. I would have to say in certain respects that I would agree as well. Now let me ask you this. If you had to speak to the legislators, right, and you say best practices, that's great. Quite frankly, I love that. But let's take it a little bit more micro. And you said, guys, I want you to come up with one rule, one legislation. what would that be? Do you have a suggestion?
I think regulators have been very clear. I mean, they can set up a kind of a high-level framework, but then they expect the ecosystem to do the job.
Okay.
And in certain areas, for example, that we've seen in recent months, I'm very proud to say I've seen the ecosystem come together and agree on those best practices. For example, I remember again 18 months ago, 20 months ago when the ICO craze was happening, some of the first ICOs were not even doing KYC. We're not doing AML. And I really believe now actually pretty much any proper ICO is doing not only proper KYC AML, I would argue they probably have better KYC and AML than many of the traditional financial institutions.
Right.
But that being said, also I think the industry is the fact that the industry has become so competitive is actually companies that have these best practices in mind are being rewarded by the market, being recognizing them as companies that are leading in the space. And I have to say, while we've been seeing a lot of positive activity in the space, like any other industry, there are still unfortunately some bad apples. And the risk, I think, for an ecosystem is actually one of these bad apples can actually contaminate the rest of the ecosystem.
I mean, we've seen the domino effect. We've seen it time and time again. We won't get into, the Ponzi schemes and the Madoffs, and et cetera, and even the housing. Everything was legal.
Correct.
Everything was legal in the housing crisis, right? And one of the challenges, have you entertained the solution for the input of the master node and the truth that goes on inside there, so that we don't, at the ground level, we don't find ourselves in the same world of grading AAA, right? you right?
Yeah.
You can see the similarities of what and that's at the core.
Correct.
We could be the disruptor, right?
No, absolutely. When I was mentioned before at PwC, our purpose is to build trust in society and solving important problems. I think giving trust to the crypto ecosystem is one of them, right?
Yes.
And obviously that of them comes with the level of what kind of assurance or audit services can be offered to the crypto ecosystem, right? And this is one area where as an organization, we've been quite careful how we approach this. For example, I mean, as of today, PwC does not really audit crypto companies yet. There are a couple of reasons behind that. One of them is obviously, if you look at the most fundamental level, double entry counting that we have today with debits and credits was not necessarily made with crypto in mind when it was created a couple hundred years ago.
Right.
Second thing is standards, frankly. A lot of the standard setters, it's tough to come up with regulations. To think about accounting standards takes some time to be developed.
Right.
But this is why, as an organization, I mean, we're actually quite entrepreneurial and quite engaged in many areas. And believe it or not, I actually believe this is the most exciting time for anybody to be in the accounting and regulatory space.
Absolutely.
It really makes compliance great again, in a way, because it's a new concepts. They're intellectually challenging, and business-wise, it gives a lot of opportunities.
And like you say, with intellectually challenging, it really makes you rethink. It truly, it forces you to look at the old
Absolutely. But that's on the regulatory front again. Some of the questions that have been popping up have been very interesting. But I have to say again, I'm very, one big trend we are seeing right now globally is regulators providing regulatory clarity. For example, just 2-3 weeks ago, we saw the Hong Kong regulators come up on November 1st with very interesting regulations for crypto funds and a conceptual framework for crypto exchanges. We've seen Thailand before that. We saw France on ICOs, and many other countries around the world are providing the clarity. So I think over the next couple of months, I expect this to continue, but also that's going to give more comfort to institutional investors who are looking at the space.
Okay, well, thank you so much for just breaking that down for me. You gave me, in a very short amount of time, a very thorough analysis of what's happening, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Great to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.